It began on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of day that smelled like rain and regret. Claire sat at the cafe by the river, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold. She'd met Michael there 3 months ago, when he dropped his umbrella and she picked it up. He had that easy smile, the kind that made you forget to ask questions. He listened. He remembered details. He made her laugh in ways she hadn't in years. He said all the right things at all the right times. "You make me feel alive again," he told her one night, and she had believed him. They spent stolen hours together. Between his late meetings and her quiet evenings, he said he was divorced. He said he was lonely. He said forever. But today, something felt off. He had canceled their lunch, claiming a work emergency. But Claire had already seen him that morning across the street, holding hands with a woman and a little boy. She froze on the sidewalk, her breath catching in her throat. The boy called out, "Daddy." And Michael turned, his smile genuine warm in a way he had never smiled at her. The woman kissed his cheek, and they walked into a house with a red door. Claire felt her heart fracture into something sharp. She stood there until the rain started, soaking her hair and clothes, washing away the illusion of every lie she'd believed. That night, when he called, she didn't answer. The next day, she did. "I saw you," she said simply. Silence. Then his voice, soft but trembling. "Claire, please. It's not what you think. Then what is it, Michael?" she asked. Another pause. Then the truth, fragile and ugly. "She's my wife." The line went dead, and with it, the life she thought she had. The following morning, Claire woke to sunlight and nausea. Her phone blinked with unread messages, 12 from Michael, each more desperate than the last. "Please, let me explain. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. I love you." Claire, she deleted every one of them. Then she scrolled through her photos, the weekend trips, the notes he'd written, the small, careful lies disguised as love. Every image felt like a wound she had willingly opened. At work, her mind drifted through fog. She replayed every conversation, searching for the moment where truth had turned to fiction. When did he start lying? Or had he always been lying? That evening, she walked to the park, the same one they used to meet in. When he said he was working late, the benches were empty, the air cold, the world silent. She sat down, gripping her phone, tempted to call him, to scream, to demand why. But she didn't. Instead, she opened her journal and began to write. "He promised forever," she wrote. But forever was already spoken for. Her handwriting shook, but her thoughts were sharp. Each word was a way to bleed without breaking. Then, as if summoned by her pain, Michael appeared. He looked disheveled, out of place, like a man who had finally been caught in his own lie. "Claire," he said, voice hoarse. "Please, just listen." She stood up. "To what?" "Another story." "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said, stepping closer. "I didn't plan any of this. I just needed something real." She laughed bitterly. "You mean something secret?" He flinched. "She doesn't love me like you do." Claire's voice cracked. "Then why are you still with her?" His silence said everything. He wanted both worlds, and she was done being half of one. "Go home, Michael," she whispered. "You already have one." As she walked away, her tears mixed with the wind. But this time, they didn't feel like surrender. They felt like release. Days turned into weeks, but Michael's shadow lingered everywhere. The cafe where they'd first met. The street corner where he used to wait for her. Even the smell of his cologne on her old scarf, it all felt poison now. Claire deleted his number but memorized it anyway, as if her heart didn't trust her mind to forget. One night, she received a message from an unknown number. "I miss you. Please, just one last time." She didn't reply, but the words clawed at her resolve. She spent the night pacing, torn between anger and longing. The next day, she forced herself to move on. She joined a book club, started running again, filled her days with noise to drown the silence he'd left behind. But healing was never linear. Every time she felt strong, a memory dragged her back under. Then one afternoon, as she left work, she saw a familiar car parked across the street. Michael stepped out, holding a small box. "Claire," he said, voice soft, almost pleading. "I had to see you. You shouldn't be here. I left her," he blurted. "I told her everything." "About us," she froze. "Why?" "Because you're the only thing that ever felt real." He opened the box, a necklace she'd once admired in a shop window. "I thought maybe." She cut him off. "You thought wrong." His face fell. "Claire, please. I'm trying to fix this. You can't fix what you destroyed by choice," she said quietly. "You had a life, Michael. You had a family. You didn't lose me, you threw me away." He reached out, but she stepped back. "Go home," she whispered. "This isn't love. It's guilt." His shoulders slumped as she turned and walked away. For the first time, she didn't cry. She didn't look back. That night, she wrote in her journal again, "Closure doesn't come when they apologize. It comes when you stop waiting for them to." Claire thought distance would heal her, but healing was quieter than she expected. It wasn't dramatic, it was lonely. The mornings were the hardest. She would wake up and reach for her phone, half expecting a message that would never come. The apartment felt too big, too still. Yet slowly she learned to fill the silence with herself. She began painting again, something she hadn't done in years. Colors poured onto the canvas like confessions she could finally speak. One evening, she attended a small art show downtown. The room smelled of fresh paint and wine, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel like the saddest person there. A stranger struck up a conversation, a journalist named Aaron. He had kind eyes and a voice that didn't demand anything. They talked about art, about the way people hide truth in beauty. When he asked if she was seeing anyone, she smiled. "No," she said. "I'm seeing myself for once." He laughed softly. "That sounds like a story worth writing." The night ended without promises, without weight, just a simple exchange of numbers. When she came home, she felt something different. Not love, not even attraction, just possibility. A few days later, she got an email. Not from Aaron, from Michael. "I saw your paintings online. You've changed," he wrote. "I wish I'd been there to see it." She hovered over the delete button, then stopped. For the first time, his words didn't make her ache. They just existed. She typed a single reply. "You had your chance." Then she hit send and closed the laptop. The next morning, she met Aaron for coffee. The conversation flowed easily, and when he laughed, it didn't hurt to hear it. It was the sound of a world that no longer revolved around pain. And for Claire, that was enough for now. Weeks passed, and the seasons began to shift. The air turned colder. The trees outside her window burned with color. And Claire found herself painting more than ever. Her apartment had transformed into a gallery of emotion, portraits of silence, of loss, of beginnings. Aaron visited often, always respectful, never asking about her past. He brought coffee, conversation, and laughter that didn't demand anything in return. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen without being studied. One evening, as they walked by the river, Aaron stopped to look at the reflection of city lights on the water. "You ever think about how beauty comes from broken things?" he asked. Claire smiled faintly. "All the time." He glanced at her. "You're one of those beautiful broken things." She laughed softly. Not because it was funny, but because it felt true. That night, when she returned home, she opened a message from an unknown number. "I saw you with him," it read. "Does he know what you did?" Her chest tightened. The number was blocked, but the message chilled her. She didn't need to ask who it was. Michael wasn't done. The next day, she told Aaron about it. He listened quietly, then said, "He's trying to keep you tied to him." "Don't let him," she nodded, but part of her still trembled. That night, another message arrived, a photo of her and Aaron walking, taken from across the street. "You move on fast," it said. Her stomach turned. She knew then it wasn't love, it was control. He couldn't stand losing power. She called the police, reported the harassment, and changed her number. For days, she jumped at every sound, every knock on the door. But she didn't run this time. She stayed. She painted. One evening, she stood in front of her latest work, a canvas of tangled colors, half shadow, half light, and realized it wasn't about him anymore. It was about survival. She dipped her brush again, whispering to herself, "You don't get to scare me anymore." And for the first time, she truly meant it. The next morning, Claire woke to find sunlight spilling across her paintings, scattering gold through the room. For the first time in weeks, she didn't check her phone. She didn't need to. The police had traced the messages to a prepaid number, untraceable but familiar. Michael had gone silent, and in that silence, she began to breathe again. Still, a part of her remained alert. Healing wasn't just about peace. It was about vigilance. At the art center, Aaron noticed her quietness. "You okay?" he asked softly. She smiled. "I'm getting there." That evening, she hosted her first solo exhibition. The gallery buzzed with people, strangers, journalists, fellow artists. Each painting told a story of trust, of betrayal, of rebirth. On one wall hung her favorite piece, a stormy sea with a single figure standing on the shore. Beneath it, the title read, "*The Woman Who Stayed*. People lingered in front of it, moved without knowing why. Near the end of the night, she spotted a figure standing in the doorway. Michael. He looked thinner, older, broken. He didn't step inside, just watch her from a distance. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and for once, Claire didn't feel anger, only finality. She turned back to her guests, leaving him behind in the crowd. When she left the gallery hours later, the streets were quiet. She walked to the river, the same place where everything had started months ago. The air was cold but gentle, carrying the hum of city lights. She whispered, "You were never my, forever you were my lesson." The reflection in the water looked stronger, calmer, almost new. That night, she went home and painted again, bright colors, bold strokes, not a trace of gray. She didn't paint to forget. She painted to remember how far she had come. By the time dawn arose, the canvas shone like sunrise after a storm. The following days brought a strange kind of peace, one that didn't depend on anyone else's silence. Claire's name began circulating in local papers. Critics described her as a voice of quiet resilience. But for Claire, it wasn't about recognition. It was about reclamation. She was finally living her life, not surviving someone else's. Aaron stood by her side through it all, never pushing, never demanding. One evening, after a long day at the gallery, they shared dinner at her apartment. The walls were lined with her new paintings, bright, alive, defiant. "You've changed this place," Aaron said, looking around. "No," she corrected softly. "I changed me." He smiled, raising his glass. "To new beginnings." She hesitated, then clinked her glass against his. "To peace," she said. Later that night, when Aaron had gone, she stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker. Her phone buzzed again, this time, a news notification. Her breath caught. Local businessman Michael Stone arrested in fraud investigation. The article detailed everything: fake accounts, stolen funds, an entire life of deception unraveling. She sat down, heart pounding, not from fear, but from closure. He had built a world on lies, and it had finally collapsed without her having to lift a finger. She looked around at her home, at the art she had created, and whispered, "Justice has its own timing." That night, she slept deeply, dreamlessly. When morning came, she didn't reach for her phone or the past. She simply brewed coffee, opened her journal, and wrote one line: "I survived the fire and learned how to paint with its light." The city outside hummed with life, indifferent yet full of promise. And for the first time, Claire didn't feel like a part of the story someone else had written. She was the author now. Autumn deepened, and with it came a kind of peace that Claire had never known before. She spent her mornings painting in soft light, her evenings walking along the river where her story had once shattered. People began to recognize her not as the woman from the scandal, but as the artist who turned heartbreak into art. One afternoon, she received an invitation from a national gallery, request to feature her work in a special exhibit titled Rebirth. She held the letter in her hands, smiling through quiet disbelief. The past felt distant now, like a movie she'd stopped starring in. Aaron celebrated the news with her, though she noticed something different in his eyes. Lately, a warmth that scared her because it felt real. "You deserve this," he told her, his hand brushing hers. "You turned pain into something beautiful." She hesitated, then smiled. Maybe that's what love is turning. Something broken into something new. That night, she stood before her latest painting, a self-portrait, but not of sorrow. Her eyes in the painting were calm, defiant, alive. She painted not who she was, but who she had become. Later, she found herself scrolling through old photos on her phone, finally deleting the last one of Michael. No anger, no regret, just closure. The next morning, she visited the gallery to plan the exhibit. As she stood before the empty wall where her paintings would hang, the curator asked, "What should we call this piece?" Claire thought for a moment, then replied softly, "The Truth That Saved Me." When the exhibit opened weeks later, people gathered to see her story told in color. Standing quietly at the back, Erin whispered, "You did it." Claire looked around, tears in her eyes, but peace in her heart. "No," she said, "I finally stopped letting it be done to me." The applause that followed wasn't for the art, it was for her survival. Winter arrived softly, wrapping the city in quiet silver light. Claire's exhibit had ended, but the echoes of it lingered in every review, every message from women who said her story had given them courage. She read their words late at night, realizing how far she'd come from the woman who once mistook control for love. One morning, Aaron came by with coffee and 2 train tickets. "Come with me," he said, smiling. "There's an art festival up north, small, quiet, no interviews, just creation." She hesitated. The old version of herself would have found a reason to stay, to wait, to seek permission, but not this time. They boarded the train that afternoon, watching the city fade behind them. The mountains outside the window looked like brushstrokes of gray and blue, endless and alive. "You ever think about how pain can make you softer instead of harder?" Aaron asked. Claire looked out at the horizon. "I think pain teaches you what's worth protecting." He nodded. "And what's worth letting go." When they arrived, the air smelled like pine and rain. The festival was intimate, artists painting in silence, strangers sharing stories over bonfires. Claire set up her easel and began painting without a plan. The colors flowed freely, brighter than anything she had ever created. Days passed in a blur of art and laughter. On the final night, as snow began to fall, Darren found her by the fire. "You seem happy," he said quietly. "I am," she replied, looking up at the stars. "And for once, it has nothing to do with anyone else." He smiled. "That's the best kind of happiness." When they returned home, Claire hung her newest painting on the wall. It was titled *Forgiven by Time*, and as she stood there, surrounded by everything she had rebuilt, she realized that the ending she once feared had simply been the beginning she needed. Spring returned, soft and golden, carrying the scent of renewal. Months had passed since the art festival, yet Claire still woke each morning with quiet gratitude. Her apartment, once filled with ghosts, now glowed with warm plants on the windowsill, paint-stained brushes in a jar, laughter echoing faintly from the street below. Life no longer felt heavy. It felt honest. One morning, as she sipped her coffee, she received a letter from an unknown sender. It was handwritten, careful, familiar. Her heart skipped before she even opened it. *Claire, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to thank you. Watching your exhibit changed something in me. You were right, I didn't lose you. I lost myself. I'm trying to fix that now. I hope you found your forever. Asterisk, Michael. She sat still for a long moment, the paper trembling between her fingers. Then she smiled a soft, genuine smile. I already did, she whispered, placing the letter gently into her journal. Not as a wound, but as a chapter closed. That afternoon, she met Aaron at the cafe by the river, the same one where her story had begun. The air was warm, the water glittering under the sunlight. You look peaceful, Aaron said. I am, she replied, for the first time. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. They walked along the riverbank, the city alive around them, the future stretching quietly ahead. As they passed a group of street musicians playing an old love song, Claire paused, her eyes bright with tears that no longer hurt. You know, she said softly, forever doesn't have to mean always. Sometimes it just means enough to change you. Aaron smiled, understanding without words. And as they walked on, hand in hand, Claire glanced at the sky and thought of all the versions of herself she had survived. She didn't need a promise anymore. She had peace, and that was her forever. Sometimes the people who break us are the ones who teach us what we're made of. Claire's story isn't just about betrayal, it's about rebirth. It's a reminder that peace isn't found in someone else's promises, but in the strength you build when you stand alone. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories that touch the heart and heal the soul. Because sometimes the ending is only the beginning.